I am coming before you on the second instance in which I am wanting to communicate some of the things going on in our great city here in Peachtree Corners. So, on behalf of the mayor and council, we're going to talk a little bit about some things that we are doing within the community as it specifically relates to our reaction to the COVID-19 virus and what we're doing to prevent its spread any further than is happening right now. And so, without further ado, let me get into it. Let me review for those of you who may not know, or as a way to make sure that we transition into this right. Yesterday, Mayor and Council held an emergency called meeting in which they adopted an emergency ordinance which laid out some restrictions for activity within our community. And those restrictions, which tied into and included the governor and his executive order that had been issued earlier in the week. These restrictions also were a part of a concerted effort by Gwinnett County government and all the municipalities within Gwinnett County to try and issue similar restrictions so that there was a continuity of restrictions across the entire county and the municipalities within, so that people who are within the county, whether it's living, working, playing here, all were going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and not have to worrying about whether there was a shelter in place or there was certain businesses that were or were not open. And so the language that Mayor and Council adopted yesterday was language that similarly was adopted by municipalities countywide, and it was certainly adopted by Gwinnett County yesterday. Now, of those restrictions, there's a couple to review that are important. One is that gyms, fitness centers, fitness studios, theaters, live performance venues, bowling alleys, arcades, and other similar establishments within the city were temporarily closed. And the temporary part was for the duration of this emergency ordinance. Now, those businesses were called out specifically. What was not called out, and what we are learning, as is often the case when things are needing to be done quickly and they're very complicated, is the language that was adopted, that all the municipalities in the county agreed to move forward with, does have some areas that are a little bit confusing. And these areas, I will let you know, Mayor and Council are currently discussing a way to clarify these points so that we don't have some of this confusion. But one of the restrictions in here states the following: all employers and business which remain open for use by the public must take the necessary steps to restrict in-person contact and maintain a distance of 6 feet between individuals while in the establishment. Now, the intent of that is clear, which is, per CDC guidelines and some others, is to maintaining that social distancing. What it has done, though, is there are businesses out there, types of businesses, in which that 6 feet separation is impossible for them to provide the type of service they do. These type of businesses would be ones like a nail salon, a hair salon, a chiropractor, a spa or a massage parlor. Those are ones in which the service they provide requires you to clearly be within the 6 foot range. There are some questions as to whether that applies to them and what is the legislative intent of the mayor and council. So that is being resolved right now. There will be new, clearer guidance coming out momentarily, hopefully by the end of the day. In the meantime, we're not, any of those establishments not named in the ordinance can continue business as usual, with the understanding that the intent of everybody here, the entire public health community, is to maintain social distancing. If we try to do what we can to maintain that separation, it decreases the chance of us spreading this virus or germs in general. Clearly, there are times, like for instance, going to the grocery store. When you check out, there are going to be instances where you're going to be within 6 feet of the cashier. So, this is a fluid situation, and we know that. Hopefully, you have, will give us and all the other local governments or state and federal government, patience and understanding as we work through this. So that was one thing that there'll be more to follow and clearer guidance. A second one related to the takeout or drive-through component of alcohol. There are a lot of establishments that had permits for on-premise consumption of alcohol. And these would be typically restaurants where you could go to that establishment and that establishment allowed you to purchase and consume alcohol on property. As this quarantine has evolved and there have been less and less people who first wanted to go to restaurants and be around, and now that the dining in option for restaurants is no longer an option, a lot of restaurants are being creative in wanting to provide carry-out, delivery, or drive-through food, and they have asked if they can include alcohol in that. And the ordinance that council adopted yesterday does in fact allow it. It does say that if a business is licensed by the city to sell alcohol for on-premise consumption, such business during the efficacy of this emergency ordinance only, so as long as this emergency ordinance is in place, they shall be authorized to sell unopened bottles or otherwise appropriately sealed containers of alcohol for takeaway of off-premise consumption, but of course to do so at the licensee's own peril as it concerns to their state liquor license. So that's important because the state of Georgia is who regulates this kind of thing. It's a pass through to us or through us, so we'll issue these licenses, but and in some cases, but we do so under guidance set forth by the state, and we're enforcing those guidelines. Now, as it relates to the state, just about 48 hours ago, the Georgia Department of Revenue, who regulates this kind of thing, came out with some updated guidelines in response to this coronavirus quarantine evolution. And their guidance as it relates to this says the following. It's a question and an answer. The question is, can a restaurant, brew pub, beer growler, or other on-premise consumption alcohol retail licensee, again, mostly restaurant here, can they sell alcoholic beverages for carry-out purposes or through a drive-through window? And here is the state's answer. A restaurant, brew pub, beer growler, or other consumption on-premise alcohol retail licensee may sell wine and beer in unopened packages only to customers for carry-out purposes or through drive-through window, except on a day or at any time when the sale of packaged beer or wine is otherwise prohibited by law. Typically, that would be a Sunday morning as it stands right now. The second exception would be at any location which is within distances to grounds or building where the sale of alcoholic beverages is otherwise prohibited by law. This would be instances where it's in close proximity to, say, a school or a daycare or things like that. And then the last point they make is restaurant, brew pub, beer growler, or other consumption on-premise alcohol licensee is prohibited from selling distilled spirits for carry-out purposes or through a drive-through window. So the important part of that is if there has been some talk about mixed drinks, like a margarita. Can a restaurant serve or make a margarita, seal it, and allow somebody to pick it up or carry it out? And the answer, according to the latest from the state, would be no, because a margarita, unless I guess it's a virgin margarita, would in fact have distilled spirits in it, and the Department of Revenue is specifically prohibiting those establishments like restaurants from selling those through carry-out or drive-through. So hopefully that resolves that. One other thing that we're looking at as it relates to enforcement of these kind of things, we are going to find, and we're going to ask for your patience in this, but we are going to find instances in which it starts to get really down into the weeds on how to comply with this. Good example of that would be a cube farm. As it stands now, if an establishment can maintain a 6-foot separation, there is no prohibition against, or there is no cap on numbers. So you could have a business, say a call center, that has people sitting in cubicles, but by law, as long as they were 6 feet apart, there would be no cap on the number of people employed there. What we've got here is we've got some instances in which there are some question as to exactly the distance. And so we would implore all those businesses out there that do have situations like this, where they have employees that are sitting in proximity to each other that are close to 6 feet, or there's a question, is do what you can to make sure that it's not even close. I mean, do every other cubicle or whatever. You know the intent, which is to separate people, especially ones that are sitting there for long periods of time. It's not like a cashier customer situation where you go through it and then you move on. So there are going to be instances where we may end up having to have some interesting conversations with businesses who are trying to push the limit. But just know that, that does exist, and we ask that, businesses that are in situations where it could be called into question is to take the steps so that it's not close. Don't push the limits. Please work with us here. You know why we're doing it. And so we'll work with all the companies here as this plays out at the best that we can. So I want to close today on a good note. And that is, we've been talking yesterday and today about a lot of restrictions and a lot of things that are inhibiting the local economy from operating the way it normally does. And we all know the reason why, but it is inhibiting the local economy nonetheless. And within economies, local or national or international, there are lots of businesses that are small, that operate on the margins, that don't have a lot of cash sitting somewhere for the rainy day for them to get by without customers. And our economy, as healthy as it was before all this happened, as healthy as we believe it'll be when we come out of it, has ground to a halt, no different than any other economy. And mayor and council recognize that. So what they have done is they have embarked on a campaign to try to do what they can to help the local economy. And they've done so by the following actions. One is the city has decided to defer the due date of business license from businesses within the city for 60 days. It was due at the end of March, and we're deferring it until the end of May, so that those businesses that would normally have owed us money based on a percentage of the gross revenue they generated last year, we're allowing them to continue to operate without paying us that money right now for at least 60 days. So that's an invoice, a bill due somebody that we can say, you know what, keep your money right now, use it to try to stay alive, keep people employed, keep doing your thing. So that's one. Two, we're also going to be deferring for 60 days alcohol excise tax for those who owe it the city. We're also waiving the convenience fee for those who want to renew their business license via credit card or online. Those convenience fees are oftentimes percentages of total amount. And so we're going to waive those to encourage people to pay it without having to come into City Hall, or to pay it quicker, or to pay it via credit card if that's the route they would like to take. Although we're still open for any way from mailing in a check to e-check to whatever. But that all of those things, those little things, and in some cases big things like deferring the payment of business license, council is doing so that those companies within our local economy can have some time to weather this storm. They are also, through a communication campaign with local industry within the city, they are communicating with industry like banking industry, like the property management or the landlord industry, if you will. They're communicating with them and saying, hey, please join us in recognizing the importance of the local economy, but the fragility of it right now. Join us in deferring certain monies due you, like we are here at the city. They're asking banks, join the city in deferring loan payments for a period of time. They're asking landlords defer lease payments for a period of time. Join the city in doing that. Let's get through this. Let's get the economy back to where it's firing on all cylinders, and then we can start talking about collecting monies that were due. This campaign that the mayor and council have kicked off, and as they communicate with the local industry, we've set up a web page on our website that will be acknowledging those companies who have stepped up to the plate and recognize the importance of this. And they will be recognized appropriately when the time comes, and we'll showcase them in an appropriate manner then. But this is one example of the things being done to help each other out. I could spend a lot of time talking about some of the really cool things we're seeing in this community of people stepping up to help others in their time of need. So we look forward to being a part of that. I will let you all get back to doing what you're doing in your respective remote places of residence. And we look forward to continuing to work through this together. Thanks for making Peachtree Corners the great community it is. Hang in there, stay safe, and God bless all of you.